So I'm going to spotlight this gentleman for us. I'm going to put the ugly guy next to him. There we go. And we're looking good. Geoff, how are you, sir? Happy Friday to you. We got you muted, I think.
There we go. How's that?
There we go. That'll do the trick.
Yeah, it's great to be here, man. Thank you very much.
Oh man, what an honor. It's a pleasure. Did Nikki introduce us? Nikki Ballou?
I
Trying
think
to
you did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember who it was because I know you were recently with Ryan Mickler's a good buddy of mine too, and I know you were recently with Ryan, I couldn't remember if it was him or Nikki, but yeah, grateful to Nikki for the connection, man, and grateful for you for taking the time. I appreciate you.
Of course.
You still in San Diego?
I am.
Ish? Okay. Is that where you're from? I'm a California native, but I didn't
No, I'm actually from back east. And I ended up out here initially when I was in the Marine Corps.
know the
And
Marines.
like, oh my God, it's really nice out here.
Yeah.
Thank you
There's
for your
there's some
service,
things
sir.
that of course. There's some things not to like, but overall, San Diego's a pretty special place.
It's a good spot, man. That's a really good place to be. Where from back east?
Maryland?
Maryland? Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm in the mountains of North Carolina now, but got some good friends out there in Maryland. We are just in DC. I was just at the White House this last week and swing through that area quite a bit. So very cool, man. Very cool. Well, I'm excited. We're just gonna dive into all things you today. We got some
Oh shit.
yeah.
Okay.
We got some good men and young men from around the world that'll come in for some Q&A on the back end, man. But yeah, we just want to dive into you and grateful for, again, for the work that you're doing and grateful for your service. And so we're just going to dive into all things Geoff, man. It, I want to get into the work you're doing, but you had this quote that I saw recently. I'm just a guy stringing words together. And then as I started diving in, I'm like, well, you're a guy stringing words together, but you're a guy who has strung a whole bunch of really cool experiences together too. So, I want to make sure that the listeners and these guys here know a little bit about that. Do you mind who is the teenage guy in Maryland? It's always interesting to find out because I understand you went to the Marines. I know there was some bodyguard stint, and so we'll talk about all that stuff. But who's the teenage version of Geoff? What's that young guy like?
Well, yeah, this is going to sound kind of crazy. When you go back to like right at the beginning of teens, right when I was in eighth grade, I was like super fat. Like
Yeah.
I was a straight up fat body. And it was like kind of essentially like, when my balls dropped kind of thing. And all of a sudden I started wanting to get like attention from girls and kind of noticing
Yep.
that I realized that I was not going to thrive being a fat body. And so my dad was like a really good guy and he's passed on, but he's a really good man. And he, kind of coached me through that. And like one summer, I lost 50 pounds and it forever changed my life. So I went into high school like a completely different human being and it set me on a completely different course. But what that did at that time is it really kind of illustrated for me and kind of showed me what um, compounding labor means. Everyone's heard of compounding interest, but then you also have the concept of compounding labor. So, and you do anything on a consistent basis, you'll have wherever you start, it's going to be completely different wherever you end up. And that's
Mhm.
all I did. I had this kind of goal that I was just going to change myself. And then in a matter of a summer, just because I was out there just watching what I ate and just very disciplined about my workout, that I shed all that weight and it's literally became a completely different person. But that definitely set me on a course of understanding that concept. And I've applied that concept uh, to till today, and I've done it with all the things I've ever done. I have a vision for something in my head, and then I just pursue it like relentlessly. And I just know if I just kind of get one little piece of it done each day, that again that builds up over time. I do that with
100%.
books. That's why I've written 40 books in a matter of a little over a decade. So it's really worked out for me. And just knowing that, I think sometimes people can be very impatient, but
Mhm.
you just have to know if you kind of just like you're not going to go to the gym once and have a great body. It's
Right.
that compounding labor. You go to the gym every single day, and then over a period of time, you have a completely different transformed body.
That's
So
right.
it's just that concept. So that growing up back east was great. I grew up on a farm, not a working farm, but like an old tobacco farm. Great childhood. I mean, I'm not going to bitch and complain about it. It was actually a really good childhood, but I had this dream of wanting to get away and see the world. And so the Marine Corps gave me that. And I enlisted right out of high school. I had really good grades. Like I could have gone on to school and college and things like that, but I just knew I just kind of pissed that away because I just really wanted to see the world. I wanted to get outside of country Maryland. And so Marine Corps infantry kind of gave me that.
That's awesome, man. I love that whole concept of the compound labor. I mean, that is really the premise of we have the mentorship programs with the men and the women and the adults, and we want to get them back to those factory settings. But everything we're doing here with the youngsters and the campuses we build, it's really based around that concept. It's like, man, we could really do a whole lot of good in this nation if we would stop waiting to try to fix a bunch of things later. And we've all got stuff to fix. We all have areas to grow. All of us grown-ups have things to fix. But man, if we can get ahead and get this concept of compound labor right earlier, maybe it's a whole lot less to fix later on, right? And so shout out to Dad for laying that foundation too.
Yeah, he never like shamed me about my weight at that time. He just kind of just was he was interesting. He was just allowing me, and I've kind of taken that parental style with my daughters.
Yeah.
He was just kind of allowing me to eventually wake up to the realization that what was going on, right? That it was not optimal. That I was
Mhm.
not going to live the life I know that and have the potential if I was going to be extremely overweight.
Mhm.
And literally it was the pressure of being a teenager and just getting the attention or getting not getting the attention of young girls that really I know it sounds kind of not that deep of a concept, but yeah, but those are needs and desires we have at all, whatever
That's
various
right.
times in our life. And so I felt that I wasn't getting that, and for obvious reasons. And I kind of came to him, and he just didn't shame me at all. He goes, "Oh, let's just get after it. Let's just here's what we're gonna do."
That's awesome, man.
And
I
just
love
kind of
that.
guided me on that. It was a really good, and this is the importance, by the way. Parents can be this, but if
Mm.
someone doesn't have that, it's the importance of coaches and or mentors in your life and understanding the concept between the two. Um, a mentor tends to be someone who's older that has got the wisdom, and they're typically in the space or whatever you want to go into, like a professional business mentor. They're kind of already have achieved what you want to achieve, and so you kind of get their time, and they kind of coach you, but from their wisdom of like, listen, I'm at the top of this. You can get here too, and these are the steps that I would suggest you take. Then there's coaches, can be like personal trainers or someone. Sometimes they can almost just be a peer,
Yep.
but mentors are very, very important. I still have a mentor today. The guy's 87 years old. He's a billionaire and he gives the best advice. I meet with him 3 times a year. And like the first time I met with him, the first question, and it kind of took me off guard. The first question he asked was like, are you having fun? And I was like, it threw me off because it was like, wait a minute, why is this billionaire asking me if I'm having fun? I thought it was going to be some kind of really deep kind of business question, kind of, and it wasn't. And he goes, listen, if whatever you're doing, if you're not having fun, then you're not going to do it to the best of your abilities. And that doesn't mean to go out and just because when you're really into something, when you're in, like, I love what I do. Being an
Hmm.
author, I've got several companies that are all kind of adjacent to the publishing space now. And I absolutely like can't wait to wake up in the morning and go and create and go and do the things that I do. Like I absolutely love it. And because I have the love for it, then I create great products, I provide value, and then money and success is downstream of value.
Hmm.
And I don't pursue money exclusively, but money just is an energy that flows directly from providing value. So if you provide value to people, and you can find out what that is. People don't think like, oh, I'm going to write a book. And it's what you're doing is you're providing value to somebody.
That's right.
You're entertaining them for whatever that is, just knowing what you're doing. I entertain, I'm a storyteller, and I
Hmm.
know that. And it brings value to people if they want to kind of have escapism, whatever they do. And then you do it good and you create a great product. Well, then sales and money and success just are a downstream product of that.
Right.
It's
Just a
not for the sake of making money. You have to do it for the sake of like loving what you do and providing the best product that provides value.
That's right.
And so I thought that was interesting when he mentioned that to me. And he's been a really good mentor along the way. I've asked him about whenever I've gone into partnership agreements and this and that and contracts. He's just always a good sounding board. So, these young men and these young people, I always recommend, just highly recommend getting mentors. Find somebody that's willing to kind of, guide you.
Hmm.
And there's so much wisdom there. And
There is.
I always think I kind of knew what I wanted to do. Like I always thought I was so fucking smart, man.
Don't
Sorry
we
if I'm
all?
dropping any F bombs.
No, you're good.
Like when I was like when I first enlisted in the Marine Force, my dad was a Marine and I did 6 year enlistment. And he goes, "What are you doing?" I guess, "Why don't you just go for 4? And if you really like it, you can re-enlist. They probably have, bonuses and stuff." But I knew what I was doing. I was so smart. I was
Yeah.
17. I was so brilliant. But I didn't take his wisdom. But I needed to learn that lesson, at that
Yeah.
time for whatever that was. I needed to learn it, so I set myself up for learning it. But childhood was good. The Marine Corps is an incredible experience. Yeah, I don't go down the road of like, oh, woe was me kind of stuff.
Sure.
There was difficult times, challenging, very uncomfortable spaces
Yeah.
and situations. But overall, it was a very positive experience.
Bro, really good, man. I appreciate you laying that out. And that that mentor, that you're speaking of, I love that question. Are you having fun? One of the interesting things I think for these young guys on here, because it's what you just said is true. At 17, Geoff, I knew everything. I knew everything. Now
Yeah.
whatever I am, 40, 45, and I know nothing. And it's weird how that works, right? And so one of the books that we are reading right now with our men is called The Dip, by a gentleman named Seth Godin. And it's talking about that concept of quitting the right things so that you can push through the dip on the right things, right? So there's the right things to do that makes sense, and so you push through that dip because you're on your way to mastery. And sometimes the dip, that slog on the way to mastery, doesn't seem fun. And then sometimes you can realize that you're pushing through something that's actually kind of a waste of your time too. So when you're looking at that, like, well, this part's fun, or this part is a little bit of the suck on the way to the fun, where I've got to take advantage of this compound labor. Like, how do you differentiate between this is maybe not fun right now, but I am having fun? You know what I mean? Like, how do you kind of play that game? Because for young guys, that's one of the hardest things. I can tell you. I made so many mistakes there, thinking, well, this is fun, but I was having fun on a dead end, versus this part sucks, but it sucked on the way to having more fun than I've ever had building the companies that we are building and doing the things we get to do. Right. So you got that balance. And I don't know there's a perfect way to transfer that knowledge to young people. There probably isn't, but how do you play with that right now?
Well, there's definitely several things I would touch on, and I reframe everything that bad comes into my life. I reframe it.
Mm,
Um, and I'll kind of start with the concept of failing. We all fail. We're all going to fail, but there's failing, present tense, and then there's failure, past tense,
mm,
right? So we're all going to fail, so we know that's the truth. But will we become a failure is up to us. That's a choice we make. We choose into that. So when something bad happens or something that says it's not ideal that comes into my space and I'm confronted with it, I reframe it and repackage it as an opportunity to learn. That
mm,
I'm going to now, this is an obstacle. It's all that it is. It's an obstacle that I'm going to give you. I've now learned that maybe what I'm trying to, the way I'm doing it isn't working. I need to go back, rethink it, retool it, and then come at it because I have a goal in mind. I have this goal that I'm seeking. So this thing down in front of me, it's in my way. How do I navigate around it? It becomes a failure when you just stop at that obstacle and give up.
mm.
Then you've failed. You are a failure. So I tell my kids, I tell the girls all the time, it's like, it's okay to fail. There's
Yep.
nothing wrong with it. In fact, it's a moment in your life that you're going to learn. It's also a testament of who you are. How do you handle it as an individual when you come face to face with something that's not working out?
Mhm.
How do you emotionally handle it? That's a key thing. You should be cool and calm. It's okay. It happens to everyone. There's not one successful person, not one, that's not encountered failure. That's not I'm failing. That's not failed at something. That's not encountered an obstacle that was incredibly overwhelming. Yet they continue to persevere through and they push through that. And if so, I have like I just recently lost. There was a bad deal that went down. I lost a bunch of money, and I remember listening to this one guy is really, again, this is something I do too. I listen to a lot of podcasts with people that are very
Mm.
wise and knowledgeable,
Yeah.
and I just kind of dive into those things. And I'm always just want to model success, and I want to model successful people. And what little kind of things are they doing? And this guy talked, he kind of gave me that idea. So I went and he talked about the time he lost, it was way more money than I lost. He lost like 1.5 million on this one transaction. And he just decided, instead of getting upset, he actually got excited. I know it doesn't make
That's a
sense.
reframe.
That's a reframe. And so I did the same thing. I lost like 55 grand. And I said, well, there's not, the money's not coming back. So how do I decide? I get to choose my emotional state. I get to choose, because if you don't control your emotional state, you can make even worse decisions.
That's right.
You can make decisions, if you're making decisions from a state of anger, fear, resentment, all those negative emotional states, you're more than likely going to make another bad mistake, and then maybe you lose even more money, or lose a business deal, or lose a relationship. So I decided to get really excited about it. I know it sounds completely foreign for people, and like within a month or so, something else came in, and then I was able to make all that money back. And what's interesting about it is I give credit to that.
Yep.
So I now, things happen. I just reframe these things as opportunities to learn, and I'm
Yeah.
going to grow from that.
Yeah.
And again, we choose.
That's
It's
right.
everything's here, by the way, too.
That's right, man.
Everything is right
That is
here.
right.
Your reality, what you see, is born right here.
That's right. That's exactly it. We get to choose that. Yeah, that 55 grand is now it's tuition. It's an investment. It's however you want to look at that, right?
That's a great way. Investment. That's what it is. It's an
Yep.
investment in education.
Yep. That's it.
It just cost me $55,000
Just cost
not to
50.
do it that way.
That's right.
100%.
Man, I love that. And one of the things I always told my kids is, and they haven't said this to me in years now, kids, oh, I'm bored, right? And the 2 or 3 times they ever said that to me, I said, well, you can't be bored. You can only be boring. So you've got plenty of opportunities. Here are the things you can do. I also like the way you framed failure. Hey, it's okay to fail. Don't be a failure, right? That's a different, I love that reframe right there, because the failure denotes not pushing through. Failing is just learning. That's just an investment in getting better at something.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's not a person that you have an idea or
yeah,
where what you want to do, and it's
yeah,
not a straight line to get there. It never
yeah,
is.
yeah. That's right.
And so you go into something knowing that, and
That's
then
right.
there's going to be things that are going to come in front of you. Like whenever something happens, I also ask this question, and I ask, like, why am I in the presence of this? So what that means is I have an awareness that there could be an obstacle or a person or something that's going to come in between me and my goal. And
Yeah,
I asked, why is it there too? I was like, why? So what that does too, it makes me shift quicker to reframing. Like,
yeah,
okay, so this person's here. There's a reason. There's a reason. There's an
yep.
opportunity. I'm going to learn something from this. Something valuable is coming from this. I know it seems like a hot mess right now, but something good's coming from it. And this is something too about how the mind is so powerful. And when a door of opportunity we think closes on us, I find that people walk right up to that closed door and they're staring at it like that. Now, when
Mm.
you're looking at anything that close, you can't see anything around you.
Mhm.
But if you were to step back from that closed door and kind of look, say, imagine you're in a hallway and you look either way, you'll see that there are other doors open.
Right.
But the only way you can see is to step away from that closed
Mm.
door
Hmm.
and know that a closed door always, man, always equals more doors open. But
Very
you
well
can
said.
only see that if you stop looking at that closed door.
That's
Stop
right.
looking at it. Look at what you want to see in your mind's eye. What do you want to see? So many people fall into victim mode, like they whine and complain
Yep.
and bitch about, oh, this happened to me. Shit happens to everybody. But what
Everybody.
do you want to
That's right.
see? And if you
Yep.
step away from that and then look around, you'll go, oh, look at that. Look at this. I'll go over there.
That's
And
right.
so that's something else I practice. Again, this comes down to your mindset.
Mm.
Everything's in your mind, how your mind works, how you think, how you like everything.
So
Reality springs from the mind.
so good, man. Yeah, there's that whole there's a put something out the other day. The concept of struggling has become this culturally interesting thing. It's almost taking the place of people that don't want to say victim. victim mentality, and they don't want to put victimhood on a pedestal. There's still plenty of people with that. But a lot of times what people will do, if they don't want to say that, they'll just replace that with struggle. And struggle can be a good thing if you're genuinely struggling. The definition of struggle is to violently resist, some sort of chains, right? And so you're actually trying to break out and move forward. Great. But people like to sit in the comfort of, I'm struggling in my, fill in the blank, my marriage, my business, my relationships, my whatever. And let's band together and all talk about how much we're struggling together. Cool. Guess what? If you're alive, you're going to struggle on something all the time. That's great. So let's not put struggling on the pedestal either. Right?
Yeah.
Let's because then we're just choosing to look at a closed door that actually is starting to open, and we're like, oh shit, we're more comfortable. Let's close it, close it. We're more comfortable right there. So
Mm,
like it is.
good point.
Everything is right here, man. It's right
Yeah.
there. So, you got the military experience. I know you went on, and I don't know a ton post-military, but I know you went in to be a bodyguard at some point. I don't know the transition to wanting to write. Is that something that has always been there? Is that something that you developed, like wanting to get to this space? What was the impetus for you there?
Yeah. So after I'll just kind of just real quickly, just kind of so after I
Yeah.
did 6 years, I decided to get out. I kind of done what I wanted. Anyone's been in the military knows what you get. I was a sergeant. So you're kind of a senior NCO. The next step is like staff NCO. And there's typically B billets you have to go through, like recruiting or drill
Mm,
field, things like that. Things I had no passion and I didn't want to do it. So my time was up. I got out, but I wasn't done with having they had still the adventure bug. And there was this, I got a flyer when I was in for commercial diving, underwater construction. So I got out, took terminal leave. I got out in November. And then by January, I was down in Houston at a commercial diving school, and which was really cool because it helped with my transition getting out. Because guess who's all in the classroom? A bunch of military guys, a bunch of
yeah.
veterans are in there who
Yeah.
spoke my language. We all got it's like we got each other. So I do commercial diving school. I graduate. I go to work in the oil fields and platforms in Gulf of Mexico and things. Or I'm sorry, Gulf of America,
That's
you
right.
know. And so that was a cool thing. That was a cool gig. I did that for a little over 2 years. And then I had an opportunity to apply for an executive protection agent position with a company called Vance International outside of DC.
Oh,
So I applied, I got that gig. That was amazing. That was a springboard to a bunch of different kind of EP work. Went around the world. I didn't do celebrities. I was primarily focused on corporate executives and kind of the business world of protection. And my last detail there was down in Mexico. I was running like counter to like the cartels and things like that, working for Japanese executives from Sony Corporation. So that was an interesting job. And
yeah.
but then I finally I met a lady, and being an
Don't do it.
EP agent isn't necessarily conducive like a good relationship that's going to be
Yeah.
lasting. And so I just I quit. I did over 10 years as that, and I eventually we moved to Idaho, and I quit that job, and then um, yeah. And then from there, by the way, so I wasn't really into writing at the time. I kind of tinkered with stuff.
Yeah.
That happened kind of later on. Like my very first book I wrote, I was 41 years old.
No kidding. I didn't
Yeah.
realize.
So by the way, that's another lesson too, that you can be, you
Yeah.
know, you can be older in life and completely reinvent yourself. So it's not as if you have to do something when you're 18 and you're going to do it the rest of your life. That most people don't.
Yeah. True
Most
story.
people end up doing 5 or 6 jobs or careers or career paths or in their lives anyway. And so it was then that I just, you start beating your body up. And I was like, okay, I can't kind of do the things I wanted to do as I was a younger man. So let me transition over to be a little bit more cerebral. And then the writing really got started. It was my very, very, very first book was a children's illustrated book. And I created that as kind of a legacy for my daughters. And that was kind of the creative like linchpin that once I created that and had it in my hand, I was like, oh shit, I can
I,
that wasn't as hard as I thought it was. What if I did a novel? But the novel was born from the idea of the novel I wanted to write came from I was a big reader at the time and I wasn't finding the book that I wanted to read. So I just said, well, if I can't find it, I'll just write it. And that's how that was created. And then I just went out like I typically do, and I went to look for inspiration of other authors, like saying, so how do they do the process? And I
yeah.
just modeled their process.
Yeah.
and then was able to write my very first novel.
Was the end of the first
Yeah,
one?
the end was the very first
Okay.
one.
Okay.
It's the first book in the New World series.
Yeah, how flipping cool, man. Okay, so I want to talk about that. I want to talk about that series. I want to talk about there's a couple things in there, particularly as we dive into just kind of culture before these guys come in and have some Q&A too. Who are, when you're reading too, who are the guys you like to read? Who are the guys, I know you mentioned the podcast too, like who are the guys you pay attention to? Podcast wise, author, like who are some of your guys that you like? There's
Well,
like,
so one of my biggest inspirations all my life reading was Ernest Hemingway. I
yeah,
loved Ernest Hemingway just because he was like the guy.
yeah.
There's something really
Oh,
romantic about like he just when you can read in his words like he'd been there, done that. Like, and he had been
yeah.
ambulance driver in World War I, had gone on and like was in some kind of brigade during the Spanish Civil War. Yeah, all the stuff he had done, and it definitely translated in his words. And I found that like really cool. I love that. So I love all of his books. For Whom the Bell Tolls, Brothers, and all those things. They're great books. And I like Stephen Ambrose from a history perspective. He's gone
Yeah.
passed on as well. Undaunted Courage, I still think is one of my favorite. And he's the guy that could take history and the way he wrote it and kind of this narrative that it just flowed like a fiction, like a fiction
Yeah.
novel. And it's just really good. So it really brought you in. The learning about the Corps of Discovery and what those guys did, the Lewis and Clark expedition, incredible.
Mm.
Like what an incredible time period to be alive. Yeah. So as far as like, I don't really read too many other people's books
Yeah.
nowadays.
Yeah.
I don't want it, but I have those classics that I lean on. As far as podcasts, I'm pretty much probably with everybody else. I love listening to Rogan. I think Rogan has a lot of really cool stuff on.
Yeah.
I like Andrew Huberman too. I think he
Yeah.
has really
Great.
grounded information. There's another guy too I listen to here and there. Is it Steve Barnett? I think was a Diary of a CEO.
Oh,
He's
okay. Yeah.
got some
Yeah.
really good guests
Yep.
on that I picked, and then Lex Friedman when he if I because I
Yeah.
kind of like going down that rabbit hole sometimes. Like I like physics and science and he has those people on talking about like simulation theory and
Yeah.
all
Lex.
that kind of things that I
Yeah.
find fascinating. Um, but
That's awesome.
so those are the podcasts and things I listen to.
Yeah. Whole bunch of good guys right there. Okay. So talking about the end and that whole series, man. So when you're looking at this and it's interesting to hear you say, look, I'm not seeing this, the books that I want to read. So here's where I want to go with this. So you writing that, is that like is it a are you writing this as like a warning? Are you writing this as like a blueprint, right? Or something else entirely? Like, what is the mentality going into this freaking amazing series here?
Well, it'd be like I said earlier. I wrote the book that I wanted to read, and I go into writing to be entertaining.
Yeah.
I'm a storyteller, and really that's my first objective is to be a good storyteller and to provide readers with a form of escapism. If they can pull
Yeah.
things from that can be beneficial for them, that's wonderful. And so that doesn't mean that I don't take any messaging that's in there that I'm trying to push forward, but I kind of do it subtly just through the
Yeah.
characters experiencing situations.
Yes.
But I think it's also important when I do apocalyptic fiction, but reality based, that
Yeah.
because it's reality based, it technically has to be accurate. As far as if you read the first book, it's going day by day after super EMP is detonated over North America, and you
Mm.
see day by day as society's collapsing. So you as a reader are experiencing as this part of the infrastructure is shutting down. This is collapsing. This is how people are reacting. This is what's happening. And I wrote it. You have several different POV characters. You've got like a suburban family in San Diego, and then you've got someone in the military, and then you've got someone in the halls of government. And I did that so you, the reader, can have this worldview of what's happening in all those kind of, not just to the suburban family, but just kind of the institutions that we rely on as a society, whether it's the
Hmm.
military or the government, and you see what's actually happening there. And some people thought the way I portrayed the military was controversial, but I think it's accurate.
Yeah.
And that I had the military essentially dissolve because they have conflicting interests and
Yeah.
priorities. And I use history as a basis for that as the military starts to fracture and break apart. because a lot of people think, well, the military would stay together and like there's this monolithic thing. I'm like, you clearly never been in the military then.
Yeah.
We're just a collection of individuals, right, with one purpose. But once that purpose is gone, what do?
That's
We
right.
want to go back to our families. And if the home front is under attack,
That's right.
we're going to probably say, listen, this isn't working. I'm going to go back and protect my family because they're left alone and I need to go back. And there's history for that. The American Civil War had that issue. They had people breaking from the ranks and going back to Georgia once they heard Sherman was plowing through. If they're up there in Lee's army of Northern Virginia, in Virginia, and they're from Georgia and they hear Sherman's plowing through the South, guess
Yeah.
what? They're leaving Virginia and they're going back to Georgia. Same
Yeah.
thing happened in the Revolutionary War. You had units from that Washington had that were from Vermont and New Hampshire, and they were leaving to go back because they were hearing about Indian raids on homesteads. And
Mhm.
so uh, the military were very comfortable and kind of we have this understanding of what it is, and that's because the home front isn't under threat. You put the home front under threat, I think the military starts to break apart. And so
Yeah.
I show that.
Yeah.
I think it's realistic.
Yeah.
And I also show kind of how the government reacts, which is not going to be very kind.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, but
I
it's
think,
so good though, man. And there's some vivid characters they face, this moral ambiguity, and I get
mhm.
it. I love just I think is spot on human behavior in a lot of ways. You know who actually introduced was funny, man. You know who actually introduced me to your work first? We moved out of California 3 years ago, and we bought a farm out here in the mountains of North Carolina. And the gentleman who we bought it from didn't want to leave here. It was his wife forcing him to go. We loved the self-sustainability of it all. But I mean, self-sustainability is an understatement. What he's got here, we can convert the whole thing to solar. There's all this electric fencing. He's got security up and down the mountains. There's cameras all out in the woods throughout all 20 acres. And you can go, like, it was just, he had more of like the quote unquote prepper mentality. And he's like, here,
Yeah.
he's like, I'll leave all the Faraday cages for you. And here's all this.
Oh, he was hardcore. I love
He
that.
was all about it, man. And so he's
He was
like, hey,
all in.
man,
He's ready for the EMP.
he's ready for it. So that's where your name first came up for me, was him.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
which was super interesting. So he's like, yeah, man, he's like, if you, and if I don't know why you guys are buying this, and that's fine. And so, but if you're buying it, here's some books that I recommend you read, right? And so, yeah, super fascinating, man. But I just the stories themselves, man, obviously phenomenal. Um, Gentlemen, I want you guys to be able to come in a second. I want to get one of kind of an obvious uh question too. I can talk to this man all day long. I want you guys to be able to get your stuff in there, but um the hard times create strong men, and right, like obviously has become it is one of those things it's become iconic. I mean, it really has taking that on that whole concept. um what is when you hear, like, what is that deep truth you think people are resonating with so much when they
Well,
quote that?
because it's timeless,
Yeah.
and when you
Yeah.
look at it, you like the words I strung together. There's other variations of it that exist out there,
Yeah.
but the concept. Well, there's two things. When you look at it's kind of I was really into reading. I read the book Generations with Strauss and Howe. They're talking about the Strauss Howe generational theory.
Never
Check
seen
it
it.
out.
Okay.
It's an interesting theory about generations, and there's four turnings. And when you're in the fourth turning, which is known as
Okay.
the crisis, this is essentially where there's going to be war.
Yep. I've seen the theory.
And
Yep.
so yes, the Strauss have generational theory. Now
Yep.
they're not the only ones that have had this kind of generational type theory. Plato talked about it in the Republic. You also have there was Ibn Khaldun, who was a Muslim historian and scholar from the 14th
Mhm.
century, also talked about generational theory. He had like five turnings versus like Strauss and House's four. And so when you look at that, you kind of like the quote in itself is kind of a distillation of that. You kind of have these four turnings kind of that are happening with it. The hard
Yep.
times are creating the strong men create the good times create weak men, which, by the way, history shows that all the time. When
Yeah.
anyone has lots of affluence and wealth, they get comfortable. And in comfort comes this kind of complacency, becomes laziness, sloth. Like the seven deadly sins are born from comfort and wealth,
Mhm.
right? and also a detachment of historical context of how you got there.
Mm,
Like they are detached from understanding how, like there's this normalcy bias that the United States has always been wealthy and has always been all these things, and all these things have been. That's not true.
yeah,
And I mean, electricity, like you go 100 years ago, not every house had electricity.
that's right.
And we're just so detached from an understanding of how we became an affluent and powerful first world or superpower.
Yeah.
With, and with that comes, and then you get all the other bullshit that comes along with kind of the ideology that follows that becomes the weak man. And when you look at it, I had it as it's a quote in the seventh book where the main protagonist is talking to his grandson. And he's talking about how, again, he's talking about how each generation, he's talking about the generations, but he's also talking about doesn't want his grandson to fall victim and become the weak man, that he
Mm,
needs to understand that they've just created a new republic out of the chaos of the collapse, and they're not, and to not allow it to fall again. And so he's kind of, that's why he mentions that. But yeah, you see it, dude. That is the quote, by the way, that's launched 1,000 death threats.
has it?
I like the 2020 election is what really brought that kind of like out,
Yes.
really prominent and kind of the zeitgeist of things. And holy shit, like,
Coming after you.
like there, like wow, I didn't never knew I was a white nationalist Nazi. All this
Oh
shit came
man.
out. Like,
Yeah.
wow, people are piling on, and I mean, lots of people, like lots of accolades, like you, but then lots of hate, lots and lots and lots of hate. And I said, wow, you're clearly the weak man, because why would you get upset about that?
Right.
And
Yeah. So
a
maybe
lot of
that,
people
yeah.
got very visceral about it.
I mean,
Very, very, very
that's
visceral.
that may be one of the major indicators of the part of the cycle that we are in, you know?
We're in the crisis. We're in the fourth turning.
Yeah.
I believe in
Yeah.
Strauss-Hauser. I believe in the generational theory. And if you look at it, they've
Yeah.
layered it out and they've gone back,
Yeah.
and we're in a crisis moment right now. It's you clearly can see it. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole with
Sure.
you, because
Sure.
that's lots of people, and we can go. But I'll
Sure.
just say this: we when you have two distinct cultures, which we have, that are residing in one physical space,
Mm,
conflict is going to occur. You got two distinct cultures vying for power.
mm.
You're going to have a conflict.
Yep.
And we're seeing it now,
Yep.
but it's going to
Yeah.
get even bigger. And it's like, if there's a comparison, we're probably in like the 1850s right now. And you know what happened in 1860? You
I
had the
know, man.
election of Lincoln, which then sparked, you know, the American Civil War.
Right.
And I think we're kind of in the late 1850s. And you're seeing politicians get attacked now,
Yeah.
which you had like politicians being attacked on the House floor in 1850s, and you're just seeing a lot of the vitriol. You're seeing a lot of the hate, and again, because there's two distinct cultures, just as there was in the 1850s. You had an industrial North, and you had a agricultural South that depended on, and which by the way, which created two distinct cultures of how they thought and how they lived in their value systems, both tied to slavery. Because the
Mm,
textile factories still,
mhm.
even though they said they didn't want it, still relied on the slave labor that the agricultural South was producing and sending them the cotton. So they both
Mhm.
were relied on it, but they had two distinct, absolute distinct cultures that were clashing. And that's what we have today. We have one that believes in a constitutional republic and a free market capitalist system, and one that does not.
That's right. Holy cow. All right, let's get some of these gentlemen in here.
Well, I mean,
Amy.
that's a whole nother conversation. We could spend an
Yeah,
hour
oh,
talking
it
about
is
that.
indeed, man. It is indeed. I know. That just put out 11 billion other things in my head too, man, to go. But yeah. Amy, good to see you, brother.
Hey, likewise. Thank you, sir. Yeah, sir, I appreciate coming on today. I'm fascinated with a lot of the things you say, and yeah, I don't know that I have a question so much, just to reinforce some of the things that you said. Because I'm in the military, active duty, and I've been struggling the past couple of years with the things that you're talking about on the culture side, and the military breaks apart without purpose, and I saw a lot of that during the COVID area, particular. Um, when we sacrificed our ethics to, go after all these, stupid policies and procedures. And I saw good people get kicked out, good people walk away. Good people passed over, and then, a lot of leaders sacrifice their ethics, for that promotion type stuff. So, when you talk about the realism of that, I mean, I see it now.
Yeah.
And something else that you said was something I've been struggling with over the past year or two of, ask yourself, are you having fun? Because I just, put in my retirement, and I'll be out here in the next couple of months, which is good. I did my career, did my service, and I'm moving on. But I stopped having fun then. And, I'm home now, which is why I'm here to be on this video. And it's just, man, such a blessing to, have that priorities and stuff in order. So I appreciate a lot of things you said, but I also want to echo your, I guess, sage advice. You're spot on. A lot of people don't realize, the current status of the culture and ethics in the military right now, but you're very prophetic. I'll just leave it at that. So thank you for your time, sir.
Well, thank you for your service, by the way.
Absolutely.
Good stuff, Amian. Good to see you, brother. KG.
Thank you, sir, for coming on today. You kind of just touched on, I was going to ask you where you thought society was at right now in our country about the hard times or weak men. So you kind of touched on that. But I also wanted to ask you, do you think that quote applies all the way down to even like a small town or a family unit instead of just one big country civilization type thing? Do you think that same thing applies to smaller organizations, stuff like
On a
that?
smaller scale.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it can. I mean, we look at like spoiled children. A spoiled child in a family unit is like the weak person. If you're giving them too much without any kind of expectation, and there's this concept, they have no idea where money comes from or all the things they have around them. That's where you get the spoiled child. And I think when you look at the weak person, and the concept of man can really be translated to as mankind, so it can take over everything. Because I've been hit on that, being a sexist, and because there can't be strong women. But yeah, I think you can distill that all the way down to the family unit. And so I think it's important for children to understand kind of how where things come from, how they got their life, how their parents created the life that they have. I think it's important that children, and also I think it's important for children to have responsibility. I was on a podcast recently. I was talking. This is one thing I think that's really neat in some regards about the military, and just my experience is that young people can take on a tremendous amount of responsibility if you allow them to. If you look at the small unit in military, I know I don't speak from the infantry specifically. You have corporals and sergeants. They're not that old. They're in their early 20s that have incredible responsibility. And if you're forwardly deploying these young men and women, they'll be in very tense situations with weaponry. They're being called upon to make decisions on a small unit level that's life and death. And they do a good job at it, which means young people can be given a tremendous amount of responsibility. We just have to allow them to do so, stop hyper controlling them, and allowing them. This is the concept of allowing them to fail, because failure, if we reframed it, is an opportunity to learn. They get to learn when they're getting in there and getting their hands dirty. And I think there's been a lot of coddling of children to their detriment. It's unfortunate because it makes their lives too comfortable. And I think there's a lot of people that talk about it. David Goggins is one that's really big about this. But comfort, I believe comfort kills. And we only become stronger, whether it's our physical body, our emotional, our mind, or our soul, when it's challenged a little bit, when it's put under adversity. Muscles don't grow when you sit there on the couch. Right. Muscles grow when you go to the gym and you put them under tremendous amounts of stress. And then, but at the same time, then you also nurture that. You feed it the good things it's supposed to have. So, these things, that quote can be taken down to a small family unit as well. And again, I think the spoiled child is the best way to kind of look at that. And that's what that is. You can have very strong parents, but with a very weak child, and what's going to happen with that? Look at like generational wealth. Yeah. It only lasts a few generations. You'll have like the initial person that creates that wealth. The Vanderbilt family is a good example. This one guy had some river boats. He bought another riverboat, bought another. Next thing, he's got this shipping empire, the Vanderbilts. Then he gets into oil and railroads. Was it by the third generation, the money's pretty much depleted? How does that happen? that happens because the children aren't taught where it all came from. They don't understand that one, they have a responsibility to keep it going. You're creating a culture within your family to make sure that they understand that. And they're not given responsibility. They're just not trained in a way, I think.
I agree.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Thanks for your perspective on that.
Yeah, could not agree more. Yeah, it's my 14-year-old's out. She's working 50-ish hours a week right now during the summer. Always has multiple jobs. That responsibility part, man, is so important.
And it's not about the money. My daughter's out working right now too. It's not about the money. It's about they're learning.
That's right.
Things.
That's right.
They're investing. Yeah, they get some money and she loves it. Yeah, I'm gonna go do this. But there's more value to what they're getting out of it than just the money. And people need to understand that.
That's exactly right. Could not agree more. Here's a responsible young man as we speak. Mr. Wells, good to see you, sir.
Thank you, sir, for coming on the call, and thank you for your service. I had 2 questions. One was exactly what people were giving you hate for, because I know that some things people can pluck from the smallest thing you said, and some can pluck from thin air. And so I was just wondering exactly what it was they were getting mad at you for.
I can't speak for all those individuals. I can just kind of generalize them, and I would say that they look at they picked out the weak man, and they literally assumed that they were that person, and that somehow because of that I was putting them down. It's the only thing I can only guess because I don't think like that. I don't think like that. So I can only kind of surmise why they were getting very, very upset. I think also there is a political dynamic that happened from it. I know there was a lot of conservatives at the moment that were really putting that out there a lot. That really kind of pumped it up. And I think some people just automatically hate. If one side says something, they instantly have to hate it. So there's a lack of critical thinking that's going on there. There's part of a team. So if this one team has this, now they have to automatically oppose it. It's that's just, again, this is a lack of critical thinking.
Yep.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And my second question was that with a book that is 7-part series, there's a lot of thinking that has to go along with that. So did you ever get stumped and didn't know what to write next? Did you have a plan for the entire 7 books when you wrote the first one? Or how exactly did you get the inspiration and be able to do a 7-book series?
That's a great question. No, I did not. I always knew I kind of wanted to do 7 books. I knew there had to be an end to it. I don't think anything creatively can go on and on and on and on and on. I mean, how many gunfights can one guy survive? I think it's like, there's no way this guy's eventually it's got to end. And so I knew I wanted an ending. Do I know how each book was going to go in the series arc? I didn't. I kind of tackled it kind of one book at a time. I had some general points I wanted to hit. And then I just kind of went on the journey, what they call process writing. So I don't create an outline. I have just general notes of how I like the series to look and how I want each individual book to look. And then I just do the process writing that's where you're just sitting down and you're just writing. And then you get into something that's called a flow state. And then when you get in that flow state creatively, ideas, characters, situations, scenes are just popping in your head. And it's like I think it's the right brain. Right brain's creative. I think the analytical side's the left brain, if I'm right. And so you have to, as a writer, and I think as any kind of creative, you have to get into that flow. And how you do that is just by sitting there uninterrupted, just writing or doing whatever that is. And eventually your brain clicks into that flow state. And that helped out a lot because there are scenes and characters that I didn't even think about that are all of a sudden created on the page.
So cool.
Did you abuse those moments? Because I know it's hard when you get into that flow state. So did you just, when you were in it, just do as much as you could?
Oh, yeah, I leveraged it. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And I'll say this, whenever I've had any kind of a concept of a writer's block, I think it's important to just get up. You can try to push your way through it. sometimes you just need to get away from it. And I've always found the best way to do this, get away from my computer, no distractions, no earbuds, earphone, and just go for a walk. Get out in nature and move your body. I think when you move your body, again, no distractions, your mind's always moving. I would always be able to process through if I'm like trying to like, what do I do? What do I do? Then the idea comes, but that comes from just moving my body.
Yep. Couldn't agree more.
Sir, thank you so much.
Good question.
You're welcome.
KG, jump in.
You were just talking about creativity, so it made me think of AI. Do any of your books touch on AI in the end of the world scenarios, and how is AI affecting nonfiction writing? Fiction writing.
These are great. I can't wait to dive into this. No, I do. I like my last book I wrote in 2.5 years ago. It was my 40th book. And since then, I've been very busy with my companies. Now, AI, it's inescapable. It's coming. I think I have a very strong opinion that it's going to be like a tsunami when it actually reaches the shore, and it's going to displace a lot of people. And we can have people that want to dislike it, but unless you're learning how to leverage it, learning how to prompt like the best person you can prompt, you're going to get left behind, I think. And I think there's going to be a lot of lost jobs creatively because of it. But if you're going to survive, you're going to have to learn how to use it and embrace it. I don't know what the world of writing is going to look like, but I think it's going to be the complete wipeout. I mean, look at creatively, like cover design and imaging and things like that. Just the quality of the stuff that's coming out now is already remarkable. And what's that going to look like in a year or 2, 5 years? And I think, but at the same time, I think AI offers a tremendous amount of opportunity for people, and a tremendous amount of opportunity if you embrace it and learn how to leverage it to your needs. And so any young person out there, anybody, any of you people, but young people, learn how to prompt, to be a master prompter. And you can create all kinds of industries, all kinds of small businesses, all kinds of income streams. So these other companies I've got, we're doing that. I've got one company I created the latter, like the end of 2024. It's just doing foreign language translations. And we still have the translator, we still have the person that can do the translation, but really now they're just being used to edit and proof versus doing the hard lifting of taking something from English to Spanish or English to German. So we use DeepL as a software that does all the translation. Then we have the final, which it does, by the way, in like 3 minutes. Exactly. It's incredible. And it's actually pretty decent. And then you take that final product and then you send it to the person who would have typically been the person translating, but now they're just doing editing. They're just reviewing it, which then saves money and saves costs. And I know that impacts them, but at the same time, it's just, this is where things are going. And by not using it, you're going to be leaving yourself behind. So we've got that going on. We've got some content farms that are creating some other content, using writing teams, prompting, creating content, and then reviewing the content and assembling it all together. I don't necessarily like it, but I understand that it's here. And so I just deal with what the reality is and I just going to leverage it. And I highly encourage everyone to do so. Don't be a Luddite. You're going to be left behind.
So do you think AI contributes to the end of the world type stuff, like some people are saying?
It could, yes. I think there's 100%. I think there is a potential, without a doubt. There's a potential. I mean, could it end up like a Terminator situation? I'm sure it's somewhere on the scope of probabilities, right? If you look at the multiverse kind of concept, or the many worlds theory, I mean, there's a potential that we get. The super intelligence just determines that we're not needed. And it would be very easy to, I have some plots kind of drafted. One's called Hive, and what it details is actually the prologue's brilliant. It starts out with you see a person like holding a torch and they're doing like cave drawings, and you're thinking they're back in prehistoric time. But then as you're reading, they're doing kind of the cave drawing of like skyscrapers falling down. So it's like in the not too distant future, and what's happened is AI is taken over and it's wiping people out. And so what the prologue is illustrating is that people are back to the Stone Age, right?
Mm.
And if it gets into, if AI becomes becomes our enemy, all it has to do is get into the infrastructure.
That's right.
All it has to do is turn the grid off.
That's what
And then sit back and let us do the rest.
Yeah. That's
human nature. We'll just wipe each other out because we'll fight for resources.
right.
AI doesn't have to do anything except turn the power off. It's as simple as that. What's that quote? We're 9 meals away from,
Right.
like,
That's right.
and everything turns to shit. So, it doesn't have to like have, drones and killing people. I mean, that could be fun science fiction, right? But all it's got to do is turn the grid off. We'll do the rest.
Not wrong.
Yeah,
Not
that's
wrong.
pretty wild.
It is. It's an interesting concept, KG. It's something that came up in the White House, man, as we were all sitting there talking education, talking going forward. And we didn't, the people running the meeting didn't let it go too far down any sort of rabbit hole where we could talk pros and cons and really have a worthwhile conversation on it. That's not what we were there for, but it did come up. And it was quite an interesting concept. And there is something that we're doing here, and I'll outline this at my office hours for you guys later too. But there's something we're going to do that we are doing with AI to help on the scholarship side for our families. To be able to help more kids. So I mean, there's a huge plus there. I couldn't agree with Geoff more. Like, we can't ignore the fact that it's going to be here. Personal emotions around it. Okay, I get it, but what do we do, and how do we do it intelligently, and how do we help our kids to be intelligent around it too? We don't have that luxury.
Yeah, I
pretty much has to come up in every conversation now. Like, anything you're talking about, you should be at least deciding what AI's place is in that conversation.
At least thinking through it.
Well, AI is going to be everything. It'll be involved in every concept.
It will.
Everything. Look at the internet. When the internet first came out, it was just isolated to just when you sat down in front of a PC that was plugged in to a hard line. Now look at where the internet, I mean, we take it for granted because we're sitting with all these devices and all this wireless and all this stuff, but it's integrated into everything. Refrigerators are smart refrigerators, smart oven. Yeah. Like the Internet of Things is everywhere. So if the internet did that over with 30-year time period, I mean, it was only 30 years ago, right? The dawn of the internet. It was only 30 years ago.
Exactly.
And then you look at AI and how it's exponential. Its growth and its integration is 5 years, everything's changed. Like, it'll completely different. The way the world is won't look the same. And so I just want to touch on the fact that I think there two things: learn how to use it as best you can, learn how to integrate it, leverage it, make yourself more efficient with it. Look at AI as just individuals. When you're sitting at your computer and looking at Chat or Claude or which one you're using, treat it like like you're the manager and it's an employee and you're going to give it a task to complete. So boil everything down to first principles about something you want to achieve and allow it to work for you. Mm-hmm. Really, it's what it is. It has now, some of it has the education of a college educated person. So allow it to do that. Allow it to, you are now the managers to learn how to prompt as best you can to give you the output to make you more efficient.
That's right.
Secondly, I think because there's going to be a complete wipeout of a lot of like white collar work jobs initially, like programmers, like they created it and it's wiped them out first. It's kind of interesting. If you look at coders, they're gone. I think there's going to be a renaissance of like labor, meaning like tradespeople.
Yep.
Because robotics isn't here. I think robotics is a little bit further out. I know it's coming, but it's a little bit further out. I think there's kids going in college today that aren't going to have any opportunities because a lot of the jobs that are getting wiped out are kind of this entry-level white collar. Now, I don't know what those businesses are going to do. How are they going to eventually train people to become mid or upper C-suite people if they're wiping out their kind of entry-level white collar? I don't know how that looks, but that's a lot of the jobs that are going to be taken out, and they're being taken out now, and it'll be more and more and more and more.
Yeah.
So I think there's nothing wrong for young people to look at trades. Like, honestly,
yeah.
I think it was the godfather of AI, this one guy, I think he was on the Diary of a CEO podcast, and he was telling people, become a plumber. I know it doesn't sound romantic, but look at the critical infrastructures that we have that people live. If we didn't have plumbing, you need plumbing. Every building has it. Your own house has it. Most people don't want to go into it, but that's a trade. That's a job that's not going away anytime soon.
That's
because it
it.
doesn't rely on data. It doesn't rely. It just relies on just using your hands and getting in doing those critical things. And again, I think robotics is too far out.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
really explore trades a
I
lot.
agree.
Look at all the different trades. And I think there's going to be a renaissance of that. And those are going to be the people that are going to be making, I think, a lot of the money, specifically if you're a plumber, you're in your own company.
Yep.
And I would really, again, it doesn't sound romantic for people. I'm a plumber, but I know a guy who owns his own, he makes $600,000 a year owning a plumbing company. So there's a lot of money to be made. It's a good business and it's needed in society.
Yep.
Trades are needed. I know they've been overlooked a lot in high schools. People want to talk about college. And I don't think people are thinking that far ahead.
People are not
Realize
thinking.
that what's your kid going to do, man? Really,
People are,
I don't think they see it. I don't think they believe it. I think
yeah,
they're living in a state of normalcy bias, and I think it's going
correct.
to hit them really hard and fast.
And it's
And I'll
already
just touch on this too. People feel insecure sometimes, and the one way to feel not insecure and to get peace of mind is to be prepared.
yeah.
That
Yep.
is prepared. We were talking about like for these young people here. Maybe reevaluate what you're going to do, understanding you're going to be graduating or going to college in a world where AI is going to be dominating. How do you succeed in that? So really do your due diligence, understand that. But then if you're looking at the possibility of an apocalyptic event, then prepare yourself that way. And what that means is maybe you don't get that great farm that like Matt has. That's the ultimate dream right there. But prepare yourself just by, I call these things the 4 pillars of survival. And that is, have resources, right? Learn skill sets, have a mindset that's hardy and strong, that you're controlling your emotional state, that you can navigate through any difficult time. And then fitness is key. Always remain fit. Not saying you have to have 6-pack abs, that's great, but have a level of conditioning and fitness that you can handle yourself in any situation. You cover those 4 things, you'll have a peace of mind. If something's chaos is happening in the streets, but you've got all that at home, you can close your door and you feel really secure about yourself. The grocery store can shut down, but you've got a 1.5 year supply of food at home.
Yep.
I look at all these things as just a insurance policy.
Yep.
And I think there's preparedness to understanding how the world is today. And then there's a preparedness for understanding what if scenario.
Yeah. And paying attention to where the puck is freaking headed, man. It's that, KG. And education is a big part of that. What does that look like? There's going to be very few institutions that pay attention and actually prepare. There will be a critical mass. There'll be a tipping point where everybody goes, shoot, these are the places we need to go, where we're talking about what's actually happening, and not having this normalcy bias like that. When we were at the White House, we were talking about the fact that 2024 college grads right now, I don't remember what the percentage was that was unemployed, but 40% of those employed are in positions that did not require a college degree right now, right? And then so even so, like and it was tiered out with all these various scenarios, but none of them were good, And we had our last discovery call. That 24-year-old young lady, brilliant, was on there with us, and she's like, "Hey, I got my college degree. I went to work. I'm working on Wall Street." She's like, "Half my job is gone. Half my job as a data analyst is all gone here in the next couple of months. Like, what do I do?" And so I've been talking to her since then. This is a commonplace conversation now. What Geoff said, 5 years from now, this is a completely different game.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I have a 6-year-old, 4-year-old, and 2-year-old, and I was worried about when they wanted to start having cell phones, but I don't even know if that's even something to think about.
Yeah, there's a lot to think through. Worried? No.
By the way, KG, I would say this. I would actually get them to start using AI now. Get them use little kids' minds, creativity. On a creative basis, get them to learning how to prompt it, how to use it. Like I know people sometimes want to distance and they want other kids' lives to only be kind of analog. You can do that, but I really, really think it's going to be very dominant, and the people that are going to thrive in that environment are the ones that know how to use it and how to leverage it as best as possible. Staying away from it is what's that? Whatever you persist. Oh no, whatever you resist will persist. It's not going away. So learn how to use it, and maybe have an 8-year-old sit there and like create whatever you want. Here, I'll get you and this have them create. There's a site called Replit. It's insane. You can go in there, you give it a few prompts, it creates apps, it creates websites in like 5 minutes, and it shows you. You get like a split screen, and you're there. You're telling it what you want, and on this screen, you're seeing it just write all this
Seeing it
code.
happen.
And then it shows you the interface. Oh, this is what your app's going to look like, and you can start tinkering with it. And in no time, you can create an app. In no time, you can create a website or a landing page. Or I would have young people just playing with that all the time. Like find something that's needed in society, find a fix, find a values center, and like, hey, can this be app based? What can I do about that? Just at least for young people, like your kids' age, have them playing with it, have them creating apps, have them creating websites.
That could be some of the most wildly entertaining stuff ever, having a 6-year-old talk to AI.
I think so too. I mean, again, you don't want them in front of it all the time, but maybe there'd be blocks of time, but they know how to use it. They know how to communicate with it. They know how to prompt like a master.
Actually, that reminds me of the TED Talk, the hole in the wall. They're the computer in the wall guy from India.
Sugata Mitra.
Same
Mitra.
kind of concept.
Yeah, Mitra. And this was I mean, he did that in 2013.
I'm not familiar. What is that?
Yeah, hole in the wall. It's a fascinating. It's more of a commentary on really kind of the human factory setting of wanting to push forward and learn. But the gentleman got a major award for essentially going into a third world country. They had never seen computers, internet, like it wasn't a thing. 2013, he drops what amounts to like I mean, almost like a vestibule, like an ATM vestibule looking thing that's got a computer, with basic internet access, basic functionality in there. These people had literally never seen it before. And then he documents what happens in just a matter of weeks with a bunch of young people that are, 10, 11, 12, and what they are capable of doing in such a short amount of time, having never done, anything like this. And he went on to replicate and do all kinds of experiments where he was going into some of these countries, dropping in computers that only had, the only thing you could get on this computer was essentially like a college level biology course. And you had 10 and 11-year-olds who didn't speak English. This course was only in English, right? And in a very short amount of time, you got these young kids, younger than the gentlemen that are on here live with us, who have never spoken English, never seen a computer, who are able to pass college level exams in English, right, in a very short amount of time. So it's more of a commentary on human capability when they're, people are willing to dive in and get themselves out of the way. So yeah, really good.
Well, I mean, look at the mind. The mind is nothing. Our brains are large language models.
100%.
That's really what they are.
100%.
And so you put young people like the age of your kids in front of it, and let's let them rip it. Like let them go. Like here, you got an hour every day or 2 hours. Just create. I want you to create all this wonderful stuff. Whatever it is, just create it. I think you'll be fascinated. And then if when they're off of it, you're still training them in the analog world and value systems and things like that. And then I think it's a full rounded preparedness for what the world is. Keeping them away from it is not getting them ready. And I mean, they could create businesses by the time they're 13 or 14 or 15. There's no reason why they can't. And they could be creating businesses and apps. And I would just like go all in.
That's
I'd rather, I've always told this to my kids, be creators, not consumers. And there's nothing wrong with consuming, but if you can be the creator of the consumable,
then you're going to win.
Yeah.
100%.
Can I jump in on this topic real quick?
Yes, sir. And then I know we're a little over time. Are you okay? Are you okay, Geoff?
I'm good. Let's just keep rolling.
Okay, thanks, man. I appreciate you. Bodie, go ahead, sir.
Well, since you guys were talking about young people using AI, actually, I have an example of this with my little brother. He's 11 years old and he's using it. He's obsessed with Transformers, robots, things like that. And he's using things like Grok and Midjourney and things like that to make him images, write him stories, and create characters. And like he's having it to where he has it act like a certain character from the story, and he has conversations with it and things. It's insane what he can do with those. So that just like pertaining to what you were just talking about, it's great, but we're having a hard time keeping him away from it. Like he's like spending so much time on it, creating things.
Yeah. But, and I love the way Geoff's laid it out, Bodie, it's people conflate it with, I want to be completely analog. I want to, so it's like, if they're going to be on here if they're going to be on here working with AI, then that means they're going to be wrapped up in social media, or they're going to be wrapped up in it. No, it doesn't have to. You can create those separations. And again, learn to where you can just focus. Where do I need to learn to create? What can I do to provide value? Because everything we were talking about at the very beginning, right? Those offshoots of providing value, all those things that are downstream of providing value, that's just another avenue. And it doesn't mean you've got to incorporate the distractions with it, right? There is a way to separate that intelligently. So, yeah, I love it, man. And it doesn't surprise me that you guys are rocking it in the Morehouse.
Yeah, look at this. If you look at all the tech leaders today,
Yeah.
they were all those young kids tinkering on their Commodore 64s.
Yes, sir. You're right.
Right? They had, I mean, maybe these young people know what a Commodore 64, but that's what they were doing. But they take it to another level. They were breaking the computers. They were taking them apart. They were working on them. They were understanding the hardware of it. And then they were putting like, I'm going to take this Commodore 64 and put this thing on steroids. And that's all they were doing. And those were the people that became the tech leaders that we know today.
Right.
And I think that's what you're gonna be seeing. So anyone that's young, that's getting in or using it, those are going to be the people in the future that we're using their apps. We're involved in their businesses that they've created to make our lives, whatever it is. So your brother's doing that. I keep going. Like he's going to get so. And there's a lot. But people say there's an absence of creativity. I don't think so. I think you work with it. And you're creative, and you're having fun, and it's being creative with you. It's like a collaborator in some way. That's where AI is now. It's like it's collaborating with your creativity.
That I again could not agree more on that. If it is somebody what is the difference between collaborating with something that is inherently potentially, and we had one of our guest mentors that said this, like, look, AI is going to get to the point where it's actually better at being human in a lot of ways than humans are. And so when you're collaborating with this other thing that has a lot of the qualities of humanity, and it's, you are having to be maybe more creative than you would be collaborating with somebody else who you've also got to deal with, some of the emotional side, or some of the, some of the pushback, or I don't know. And I'm not saying one's better than the other, but I would argue that saying that a lack of creativity would be there, I think that's a false way to look at it.
I would just say this too about it. I treat, when I interface with AI, I don't look at it as like a Google search engine.
Right.
I look at it for what I know that it is. And I think when people the interface with it, knowing that it's essentially an intelligence.
Right.
And I treat it that way. And it's only going to get more and more intelligent, or does it ever become sentient? That's a whole nother concept or conversation. But I treat it that way. And so I approach it like I've said before. I'm the manager, and these are all these assistants that I have. I pay them $20 a month. And they create licensing. I just created a licensing agreement today for a Japanese publisher, and it does a brilliant job. Like it's like, and it spits out like that. I need something. I ask for its advice. What do you think? And it dives into this, that, da, 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 da. And I leverage it as much as I possibly can right now.
So because I'll take these guys through a debrief before the hour's over, and this has been freaking fascinating too. Before we get into kind of the final wrap up of finding your work and how we can support going forward, how do we're talking AI, talking about civilization, talking about some of these patterns and seeing some of these patterns in humanity, talking about this split that we're seeing from a cultural perspective, all of those things there, and you being a values-driven human, you being somebody who's a dad too, are you more optimistic for where things are headed, or more pessimistic for where things are headed? Are you more of an optimistic pessimist, or a pessimistic optimist, or like where do you find yourself when you're looking at kind of the overarching goal? Or
I find if I sit and consume too much news, even if I'm on X, I become very pessimistic.
Yeah, understood.
So one thing I personally practice is I actually don't follow the news.
Yeah.
Smart. I don't. I find that I can control my thinking and my emotional state when I'm not thinking about stuff all over the world, where unless it's knocking on my doorstep at the moment. I
Yeah.
have the general ideas like, oh, there's this Iran thing going on, but do I need to know every little nuanced issue and detail upon what's happening? Does it?
Yep.
No, I don't. I have a general idea what's happening because I look at things as what can I control?
Yeah.
So many people, like I think Jordan Peterson was getting it, but here's another guy I follow. I think
Mm.
has got a lot to teach in some regards. You see a lot of people that are activists out there, and they're getting enraged about things that I think is really what it is from a psycho. I think he psychoanalyzes these people because he can. These are people that don't want to deal with their own issues in life.
Mhm.
Instead of looking up at themselves and going, hey, I need to fix this in my life, or I need to do that, they look at these grand issues in the world and become advocate or activists for it.
Right.
You know, free Palestine or whatever it is. Like they're really going to free Palestine? No. How about but yet they can't go get a job somewhere, or they're not preparing for their own future. And that doesn't say that. That's not to say at the same time we shouldn't have concerns for things around the world. It's not saying that. But what can you actually tangibly control? And that is
Mhm.
your own life. That's the only thing you can control. You can't even control your brother or your sister or your parents or your spouse. You can't control anybody but yourself. And so become a master of who you are. And so when I look at the world, yeah, there's a lot to be pessimistic about. Um, I try to be always optimistic. I can see the bad in AI, but I also realize there's good at the same time. The universe is kind of created. There's always like a dichotomy, right? There's a binary thing, and all like the way God created it, there's very much as always this yin and yang kind of thing. And I just tend to look at the positives of things, realizing there's a negative aspect, but being aware of that, I then try to make myself prepared.
That's right.
So, and that's why I talk about the preparedness.
That's
Like I realize AI could go down we could
right.
end up in a freaking hellhole situation. We're fighting for our lives in caves somewhere, but we're not there yet. And I know AI is here. I can use it and leverage it as much as I can to enrich myself, to bring value to people and do all these wonderful things. So I'm doing that, realizing it's not going away. It's not going away. There's too much money
Mhm.
involved. At the same time, aware that these circumstances could happen, I prepare myself with all these resources I talked about earlier. And that's just an insurance policy. It's like people
Right.
have car insurance, life insurance. It's just an insurance policy. And that includes mainly taking care of your body, taking care of your health, and then also taking care of your mind and making sure you have resources and skill sets for that preparedness over here while
Mhm.
working in this kind of space. So I'm not really pessimistic. I realize the world could go into a hellscape tomorrow, and I'll just navigate it as best I can with what I have.
Right. I think we look at the world in very similar ways, my friend. Yeah, really, really grateful. The final questions on our side, and I'll take these guys through a debrief out here. What are you working on right now that you're most excited about? Where does everybody find you? And how do we as an organization best support you?
All my books are on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, things like that. Best place to go is the Amazon. People want to reach out to me. Go to my website, gmichaelhopf.com, and you can just read. There's a contact page there. I reply to all my emails. Can't say I'm going to reply to them within the first hour, but I reply to everything. I love sharing my knowledge with people too. I was helped out early on in my career by just really solid advice from this one guy in writing, and ever since that was God, when was that? 10 years, 11 years ago, 12 years ago, that I promised that I would do the same. Anyone comes with any other question professionally, I'll do my best to answer it and help them. And as far as provide, like how can you best just, I go back to the preparedness. I like to, like, if anyone can get anything from the conversation we've had today,
Mm.
is tackle the world. You can thrive. Everyone can thrive.
Mhm.
The world isn't a fixed pie. It can expand as much as necessary. So it's not a fixed pie. You have to like come from a place of lack and strive to get. So no matter what's happening in the world, there's always going to be winners and losers. Choose to be the winner. Choose to thrive. But it also means you have an awareness that there is bad things that can that could be at your doorstep, and so therefore prepare for that. Get that insurance policy. That's one thing I always talk about. That doesn't mean you hide in a hole somewhere. Doesn't mean you look at the world negatively, pessimistically, angry, cynical. I think be positive, be optimistic, but with an awareness that these other things could exist or could be in front of you.
Brother, I love your style. Grateful. I'm gonna bring these guys through. I'll shoot you a text here in a little bit when we get off. And I just want to keep the conversation rolling, continue the support however we can, man, because you're doing great work. You're putting out what I believe is very solid, realistic, rational advice, but you're also giving people a way to process that I don't think everybody has the willingness or talent to be able to do, and you're doing it in a phenomenal way that's impacting culture. And I think that's a powerful thing, man. So I just want to continue the conversation and continue to pour in where we can too. So
I appreciate all the kind words, Matt. I really do. Thank you so much. By the way, I love that. Love the Teddy Roosevelt's Man in the Arena behind you.
and I mean, you were just talking about the critics, right, that are out there. I mean, that's it,
Yeah.
man. Yeah, that's exactly it. So like I said, brother, I think we see the world in some very similar ways. So really, really grateful. Gentlemen, can you guys give a big thank you, please?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
It's awesome.
Thanks to all of you. Really appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity to come and speak.
Honor, brother. Honor. I'll reach out here shortly. Shoot you a text.
All right. Take care.
All right, brother. You as well.